Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our City Council meeting tonight. We appreciate everybody in attendance. Today is Tuesday, March 4th, and we're going to start by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Rolfing.
Here.
Staggers.
Present.
Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jameson. Karski.
Here. Very good. We start our meetings in Sioux Falls with an invocation, and we're very, very pleased to have a retired pastor, Lloyd Stivers, back amongst the chambers. And Pastor Stivers actually told me that he was here for the first meeting that was held by this council in these chambers. So it's great to have you back.
Things haven't changed much.
Okay, very good. Well, Pastor Stivers, if you wouldn't mind, lead us in prayer. We'd appreciate that. If everyone would stand, and then if you'd remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance after that. Thank you.
Let us pray. Gracious Father, we come this night thanking you for the many gifts that you have given to us individually, as a city, as a state, as a nation. And we pray that as citizens of these, we may show our thankfulness by being responsible citizens in all that we do. We pray for this council, that as they deliberate the business of this community, that they may be led by your Spirit, they may be guided by your wisdom, and that they may live and serve and work for this community. We face an election as this community, election for many of our officials. We pray, Father, that each of those who are on the ballot might be ready to serve as good citizens of this community. But we pray also, Lord, for us who are the citizens, that we might be informed, that we might learn the problems, that we might seek solutions with the City Council, and that through this election, your will be done. Father, you have blessed us greatly, and for this we give you our thanks. In the name of our eternal God we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Good to have you back. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Is Melissa Townsend here, please? Melissa, please come forward. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Melissa, you're from Active Generations, is that correct? Yep. Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you here. I've got a couple of proclamations I'd like to read on the city's behalf. Whereas, on March 22nd, 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into a law a measure that amended the Older Americans Act of 1965 and established a national nutritional program for seniors 60 years and older. Whereas, the Meals on Wheels Association of America established the National March for Meals campaign in March 2002 to recognize the historic month, the importance of Older American Act senior nutritional programs, and raise awareness about senior hunger in America. Whereas, the 2014 observance of the National March for Meals campaign provides an opportunity to support senior nutrition programs that deliver vital and critical services by donating, volunteering, and raising awareness about senior hunger. Whereas, the senior nutrition programs through Active Generations in the Sioux Empire have served our communities admirably for 42 years. Whereas, volunteer drivers for Meals on Wheels programs in the Sioux Empire area are the backbone of the program. And they not only deliver nutritious meals to homebound seniors and individuals with disabilities, but also caring concern and attention to their welfare. Whereas the Senior Nutrition Program through Active Generations in Sioux Falls provides nutritious meals to seniors throughout the Sioux Empire area and helps them to avoid premature or unnecessary institutionalization. Whereas the Senior Nutrition Program through Active Generations in the Sioux Empire provides a powerful socialization opportunity for many seniors to help combat loneliness and isolation. Whereas the Senior Nutrition Program through Active Generations in the Sioux Empire deserves recognition for the contributions they have made and certainly will continue to make to local communities. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim March 2014 as March for Meals Month in Sioux Falls, and I urge every citizen to take time this month to honor our senior nutritional programs, the seniors they serve, and the volunteers who ultimately care for them. Our recognition and involvement of the National 2014 March for Meals campaign can enrich our entire community and help end senior hunger in America. So no senior goes hungry. Melissa, thank you so much for being here tonight, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Julie, would you come forward? Welcome. And would you want to bring some friends? Come on up. Come on up, folks. Let's get you on camera here. Well, I do have Julie Briggs here, and she's the Executive Director of the Business Resource Network. And Julie, it's great to have you here, and thanks for being here as well. I also have a proclamation I'd like to read on the city's behalf. The proclamation reads, whereas respectful and inclusive language is essential to the dignity and humanity of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. However, much of society does not recognize the hurtful, dehumanizing, and exclusive effects of the words retard and retarded. Whereas it is time to address the slurs retard and retarded and raise the consciousness of society of the word's hurtful effects. Whereas the Spread the Word to End the Word campaign is an ongoing effort by Special Olympics, community groups, organizations, and individuals to raise the consciousness of society about the dehumanizing and hurtful effects of the words retard and retarded. Whereas the campaign, created by youth with and without developmental disabilities, is intended to engage schools, organizations, and communities to rally and pledge their support. Whereas on March 5th, 2014, residents of the city of Sioux Falls and throughout the United States will lead the annual Day of Awareness to spread the word, to end the word. Whereas the day will be devoted to educating and raising awareness of the positive impact individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have in our communities, and why the use of the R word is hurtful, even in casual conversation. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim March 5th, 2014 as Spread the Word to End the Word Day in the City of Sioux Falls, and I encourage all citizens to pledge to stop using the R word, helping to make the world a more accepting place for all people. Thank you, Julie. Thanks to all of you for being here. Congratulations to you. Thanks, Julie. Thank you. Thank you. How am I going to do this? Again, Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. We'll now move on to our consent agenda for tonight.
Mr.
Counselor?
Mayor, I need to recluse myself.
Thank you very much.
Move approval, Aguilar.
There's been a motion to approve by Councilor Aguilar, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. Is there any motions or any changes? Thank you. We'll have a vote. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 7-0. We'll now move on to our regular agenda.
Move approval, Rolfing.
Second.
Anderson.
It's been a motion to approve tonight's regular agenda by Councilor Karski, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Council members Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 8-0. Thank you. Folks, welcome to our meeting tonight. We're certainly pleased to have everybody here. This is an opportunity for you to engage the council on any topic that you'd want. We just ask that you come forward, introduce yourself to the people of our town, and if you could keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, we would appreciate that. Is there anybody who wanted to address the council? Welcome.
Scott Arisman, Sioux Falls. I guess I'm a little concerned about this education program that we have going on. I watched the videos online. There's one I'll get to that I have a real concern about, not being education and more of advocacy. But what I found interesting was the city thinks they have a need to educate the public about 4 initiatives that citizens brought forward. The city didn't bring forward. And they're doing 8 meetings. They're doing online videos. Yet, the amendments that the city brought forward on their own through the charter has 1 page on the city website. 1 PDF, 3 pages long. No videos, no meetings, nothing explaining to the public what the amendments are. These are the amendments the city brought forward, not citizens, but there's not one single meeting about it. Just a PDF on the city website. But you know what? This is how it's supposed to be done. The city has a responsibility, like the state does, to explain the ballot issues. In other words, what they are and what a yes or no vote means. And that's it. So let's move on. I looked at all of the videos, but the one that concerns me most is the pool. First off, there is no indoor pool on the ballot. There's a question that asks if you want to build an outdoor pool or not build an outdoor pool. But let's break apart the PowerPoint and the video. I kind of pasted together some stuff that concerned me about it. First off, you'll see a picture of people walking to an indoor pool in a winter wonderland, but no pictures of kids riding their bikes to an outdoor pool. It says here that an indoor aquatic facility was proposed to replace a pool at Spellerberg in the capital program 2013-2017. Yes, that is true, but that capital program has to be reapproved this fall in the new budget. It says traditional pools are functionally and physically obsolete, but yet we continue to use them still. It says here there's a need for an indoor water, but there's nobody, it doesn't say why we need indoor water, it just says we need it. It's clearly advocacy, that's not education. Need opportunities for year-round programming for children, seniors, veterans, and swimming instruction. Once again, it says there's a need, but no proof that we need it, just advocacy. Replace existing Spellerberg pool with indoor aquatic facility. Top priority. Whose top priority? The city or the citizens? It doesn't say. Advocacy. Indoor facility would meet immediate need for year-round programming. There's plenty of indoor facilities to swim at that are private, that any of us can go to as long as we buy a membership. Advocacy. Facility could include warm water therapy opportunities to be offered in conjunction with the VA hospital. Has the VA agreed to that? Nope. Advocacy. Replacement with a new outdoor facility is not recommended at this site. Says who? Advocacy. This is a nice one too. It says the The hourly operating rate of an outdoor pool is $209 an hour, and for an indoor pool, it's $128 an hour. It's probably factual. But once you add those numbers up, it's about $100,000 a year to run an outdoor pool and about $700,000 a year to run an indoor pool. There's a parking analysis that says an outdoor, this one really made me laugh, an outdoor facility would increase daily traffic by 2%. You know, if you drive past Drake Springs in the summer, the busiest pool in this town, the pool will be packed. There's no increased traffic. There's a lot of kids walking to the pool. There's a lot of kids ride their bicycles to the pool. I guess when they talk about increase in traffic, they must be talking about bicycle traffic. Indoor facility, traffic at the indoor facility will not increase. Well, why wouldn't it? If we need this pool, why wouldn't there be more people driving to it? Project costs, $19.4 million, cash down payment of $6.4 million in capital program, bond $13 million in capital program. Like I said, the council has to approve this $6.4 million in the fall budget. They also have to approve the $13 million in bond. This is not a guarantee. Just because the pool gets voted down as an outdoor pool, the new city council still has to approve these things. A no vote for an outdoor pool does not guarantee there's going to be an indoor pool. There might be a lot of different people sitting on this council after April 8th. This is clearly advocacy, and it's clearly against state law. And I'm hoping that someone in the AG's office in Pierre is watching this election very closely and investigates.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Danielson, a resident of Sioux Falls. I want to thank you for a chance to visit with you tonight. Part of the statement you'll hear from me tonight was presented by me at the city-sponsored ballot measures last night. I've been active in politics, dealing with many different issues and candidate campaigns over 40 years. As a group of us began to watch the campaign for the issues build, we saw serious issues in the way the city election of 2014 was being managed by the city of Sioux Falls. We banded together to create a new organization, and I'm now chairman of a group you may have heard of, Citizens for Integrity. The Sioux Falls City Attorney is legally required to supply in written form a simple, clear language statement of what a yes vote means and what a no vote means. The publication will also include pro and con statements to be approved by each of the parties of the initiative. That's it, nothing more, nothing less. Here's an example of the 2012 general election ballot statements issued by the Secretary of State of South Dakota. And also in here, if you remember much about the election of 2012, some sections were forgotten to send out, and our Secretary of State caught a lot of trouble because they were forgotten. These mean a lot to the people of South Dakota. The pro and the con statements are the one clear spot that both sides of any one of these issues can sit down together and say, this is what it means to be for it, and this is what it means to be against it. And that's been part of the South Dakota process for decades. The 4 ballot measures have not legally been presented to the people who are expecting to vote in about 35 days. The people have been presented with on-ballot advocacy education videos and public pronouncements by city officials. South Dakota Election Code, does this run?
Yes. Jace, would you help, please? Thank you.
I'd like to show or slide it from the top to the bottom if you could or something.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Here's a copy of an email that I've received that came from the Sioux Falls City Attorney's Office. The South Dakota Election Code is very clear. The cover story created by the Sioux Falls City Attorney's Office is not. Prior to the treatment we citizen petitioners received from several city officials, I personally never understood what it'd take me to get so deeply involved in city government. And for that, I guess I thank all of you for helping me find a reason to be so involved. This council with the administration has allowed the process to get out of hand, bordering on unconstitutional. We request the city council to put a stop to these advocacy charades masquerading as education, before further damage to our electoral system is done. We are citizen owners of this government. You are chosen by your citizen peers to help prepare the city for the future generations to follow. By allowing city employees to potentially break city and state election laws and traditions, you are damning their futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Greg Neitzer, Sioux Falls. Tonight I want to talk to you about shaped places as it relates to conditional uses, public input, and residential protections. The current ordinance has several problems. First, the single-family district allows way too many uses, including twin homes, group homes, assisted living centers, daycare centers, nursing homes, middle schools, high schools. All of these are allowed today in your neighborhood with a conditional use permit. I don't think a lot of people probably know that. The current ordinance has inadequate, inconsistent, non-existent separation distances requirements from residential uses. All of these below can be very close to your residential neighborhood. The current ordinance has illogical commercial zoning. Commercial zones are not tied to the size. C2 can be bigger than C4. C4 is more restrictive than C2, which is completely illogical. All commercial zones allow big boxes with a conditional use permit, and the sizes are not fixed. That's the important part, a conditional use permit. You can go as big as you want as long as you get a conditional use permit. The regulations are hard to understand and confusing, and there are soft standards with conditional uses, which means a lack of certainty and risk for adjacent landowners. Shaped Places addresses all of these problems. Citizen concerns and demands are addressed with Shaped Places. Shaped Places makes residential residential. Conditional uses for non-residential uses in residential zones have been eliminated by citizen demand. All of the below are eliminated. They will no longer be allowed in your residential neighborhood. Shaped Places make single family, single family. Twin homes are eliminated from single family districts in Shaped Places. There's no more risk of a conditional use permit turning an empty lot next to you into a twin home. How many times have we seen that in front of the city council? Shaped Places adds minimum separation distances. Sensitive use protection means automatic protection through required separation distances from any unharmonious uses. This is automatic, it's not conditional. Shaped Places adds buffer yards, which adds required landscaping separation distances when commercial or office is adjacent to residential. Shaped Places makes commercial zoning about the size. The size of the building is fixed based on the district with Shaped Places. There's no conditional use to make it bigger. You have to rezone, and you can see the size that each one can go to. Shaped Places regulations are easy to understand and provide more predictability for adjacent landowners. Far less conditional uses means less risk and unpredictability. Rezoning is far harder and requires more hearings than a conditional use permit and puts a burden on the developer, not the neighbors. Inappropriate conditional uses have been eliminated. These uses are moved to their own districts. Less conditional uses because many uses have been completely eliminated, and developer must demonstrate to the council why the new zone is appropriate. The burden is now on the developer, not on the adjacent landowner. What doesn't change? Public notification, conditional use hearing procedures, opportunities for public input, and the appeals process. All is exactly the same. Nothing has changed in that regard. Shaped Places adds conditional rezonings. You cannot do a conditional rezoning today. Now with Shaped Places, there's a new provision, the application to the city or by the city for zoning district change in Part E. You can add conditions now. I don't even know if the council knows that. Just like you can in a conditional use hearing. Any conditions that can be added today with a conditional use permit hearing can be added at the rezoning. So we have all of these Shaped Places benefits. Makes residential residential, single family, commercial zoning is about the size, makes commercial zoning logical, adds required separation distances, provides sensitive use protection for your neighborhood, provides buffering through buffer yards, it puts a burden on the developer, it makes zoning matter, it makes the requirements consistent, predictable, and upfront for all parties, and it preserves public input and notification process. Shaped Places provides maximum protection for residential uses. That's why you should vote yes on Referred Law 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Bob Colby, Minnehaha County resident. I have two requests, one old and one new. Several months ago, actually probably a year and a half ago, I spoke before the council, the mayor and honorable councilors here, speaking to the pawn shop ordinance that you had that dealt with the leads online, and I asked that if you institute this, that after a year that a report be issued, excuse me, a report be issued on whether or not this was a good thing, a zero thing, or a negative thing. What I'm asking now is that after a year and a half that an assessment provide us with the information on how many reports were sent to leads online, how many arrests were made in regard to those reports being sent to leads online, because this was an unsecured data bank that could be hacked by somebody, and a lot of information on private individuals could be utilized to the negative effect of them. I remember the mayor coming to a radio program saying that he would do that, and that was about a year after the instituting of this particular ordinance. As I said, I'd like to see how many arrests were made because of leads online, how many arrests were made because of the hold that was put on people who bought gold and other precious metals and gems, to see whether this was a good ordinance to have part and parcel of. So we don't have online, maybe you've done this already, maybe this has already been taken care of, and it just needs to be a report that someone could send me. But that's what I'd like to see. Has this ordinance served the purpose for which it was sold? That's the historical one. You are coming up now, in the near future, dealing with an ambulance ordinance. And some of us, Councilman Staggers and Councilman Anderson, and some of the rest of you remember the ambulance fights in the good old days. Maybe they weren't so good, but they were old. Now, after we went through an assessment process to see what an ambulance ordinance on an ambulance system should have, we were to institute some of these things because we spent a fair amount of money getting this particular assessment. Some of those things were instituted, some were not. One of the things instituted was REMSA, which was kind of an auditor, and I mean an auditor function to see whether or not the ambulance system was doing what it needed to do. That has not gone away. In most businesses, once you get the self-assessment going, you get rid of the auditor. You don't keep the auditor in line, and now you have two systems going. And here's an opportunity for the city to save some money, because maybe you once in a while have an auditor come in and look it over, but you don't have the auditor as a staff member or an organization working all these years for this particular effort. Now, I did ask the mayor, not the current mayor, but a previous mayor, whether or not it would not be reasonable for the city to have its own ambulance service. The response, verbal, nothing written, nothing to prove what was said, was, well, my people tell me that private enterprise can do it cheaper. Now, to me, it doesn't seem reasonable that a for-profit enterprise that pays dividends can do it cheaper than an in-house system. It costs us money because we send both the fire department and the ambulance service to every call. That seems to be a duplicity of effort. I mean, the fire department doesn't work for free, and it costs money to go on out and do it every time they report to a call, and then the ambulance shows up afterwards. Now, if the ambulance service can do it, private enterprise, for less money than the public can do it, I would be surprised. Because if that's the case, then maybe we ought to privatize the police department and the fire department. I'd like to see some real figures showing that this is a good thing to do, to have a private enterprise, because we know that this private enterprise, though they have good staff members working here in town, they are always kind of on that bankruptcy edge. If we own it, if we take care of our citizens and protect them with police, we take care of our citizens and protect them with fire, and then we farm out the health care and maintenance, it does not seem reasonable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colby. Folks, is there anybody else who want to engage the council tonight? Welcome.
Tim Stanga. Had a lot of people ask me why I don't come to the city council meetings that much anymore. Told them, I said it's just hard to take on what you see. You can just tell what city council person's going to vote, the way they're going to vote, or how they're going to vote. It's just so obvious it isn't funny. There's one person that's running for city council. He stated that the city council was out of touch. I believe him 100%. The city council is out of touch. Why do people go out and get signatures to get something done in this city? Because the city council's out of touch. The mayor's office is out of touch. Because you guys are elected by the citizens of Sioux Falls, all citizens, not special groups, not the millionaires and billionaires. You're here for everybody. The homeless, the elderly, I don't care who you're going to be here for. That's what you're elected for. I had some people call me on the swimming pool too. I watched a little bit of it on the news. I have never seen such a backdoor deal in my entire life. This reminds me of the event center. We're bringing out the puppets now. The puppets are going to sell something that the city thinks we need versus what the citizens think we need. I think it's pathetic. I think we should call off the dogs, the puppets. We should sell this down as how it says in there. It is an outdoor pool. It is not an indoor pool. But there's people on the city council and the mayor's office that are being poked and prodded by special interests and people that have money that think we need this indoor pool. We're $400 million, almost $400 million in debt as a community. And we're complaining about the federal government? We're just a little minuscule. And we're $400 million. What we're going to do is we're going to pass it on to our children, and then we're going to pass it on to our grandchildren? I just don't understand it. Kermit, keep doing what you're doing. The only way that we're going to find out this frivolous spending out of this city is because if you're bringing it up. When we're going to go on TV or we're going to have ads to go and pick poop up out of your backyard, maybe you should go up about 2 miles and see that cow that walks in the water. Do you think that cow is any better than the poop in my backyard? I think we got to start at the beginning of the rivers. It doesn't start just coming into Sioux Falls. It starts at the beginning if you're going to start anywhere. But we're wasting so much money. We spend $30,000 on figuring out how we can make downtown better, bringing in some businesses and making it better. You could put gold down there. You're not going to force people to go downtown. People are going to want to go downtown because they want to go downtown. What's going on downtown right now is great. That's what has to go downtown. But our roads are falling apart. Last year I came in and I told you people, roads are deteriorating, they're falling apart. This year it's going to be twice as bad. Next year it's going to be 3 times as bad. We're going to keep taking bonds after bonds after bonds, and when do we start paying off these bonds? Our grandchildren? I just don't understand where you people come from every day. I know you've got a hard job here. But roads should be number one. Infrastructure should be number one. The special interest stuff should go to the wayside because we've got streets out here that are falling apart. You know, whenever I bring up trimming trees or this, they always say, oh, God, you got 97% compliance. Why worry about it? Let's come out with an ordinance that if your street is falling apart in front of your house or your curb and gutter is falling apart in your house, you should be able to send a letter to the city. Give them 30 days to fix it. If they don't fix it within that 30 days, then you can go hire somebody to fix it for you. Let's see if they get that 97% compliance then.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wanted to engage the council? Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate the comments. We're now going to move on to item number 57.
Item number 57, new 2013-14 retail malt beverage license for Rowdy Hog Smokin' Barbecue LLC, Rowdy Hog Smokin' Barbecue LLC, to be operated at 923 South Marion Road, with the conditional use permit 2014-16 being approved on February 5th, 2014, pending final inspection per building services. Item 58, new 2014 retail wine license for Radiance Day Spa LLC, Radiance Day Spa, to be operated at 6209 South Pinnacle Place, with the special use permit 2014-112 being approved on February 5th, 2014. Item 59, transfer of a 2013-14 retail malt beverage license from LCDD Incorporated, Carpenter Banquet Ballroom, 221 South Phillips Avenue, Suite 100, to Catering America Incorporated, Chef Dominique's Catering and Banquet Carpenter Building Ballroom, 221 South Phillips Avenue, Suite 100, with conditional use permit 2014-12, approved on February 5th, 2014. Item 60, transfer of a 2014 retail wine license from LCDD Incorporated, Carpenter Banquet Ballroom, 221 South Phillips Avenue, Suite 100, to Catering America Incorporated, Chef Dominique's Catering and Banquet Carpenter Building Ballroom, 221 South Phillips Avenue, Suite 100, with conditional use permit 2014-12, approved on February 5th, 2014. Item 61, special one-day liquor licenses for Ovations Food Services LP, Sioux Falls Canaries Baseball Club, to be operated at 1001 Northwest Avenue in the Tiki Bar and Suites for the 2014 home season games. Item 62, special one-day off-sale package wine dealer license for the Elride Shriners to be operated at the Elride Mosque, 510 South Phillips Avenue for the second annual wine, moonshine, and beer tasting event on March 8th, 2014. Item 63, a special one-day malt beverage license for Siouxland Heritage Museums, the Old Courthouse Museum, to be operated at 200 West 6th Street for a St. Patrick's Day family dance on March 17th, 2014.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing.
Evening, Jamie.
Items 57 is a barbecue restaurant wanting to add beer to their menu. They are located on South Marion Road. Item 58 is a request that would allow the business to offer wine or champagne to their clients during their spa services. Items 59 and 60 are a request for Catering America to take over an existing banquet facility in the Carpenter Building, and that would just transfer the licenses into their name. Items 61 through 63 are various special one-day requests.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, any questions on anything?
Move to approve, Karski.
Councilor Karski's made a motion to approve these items, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann? Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 64.
Item 64 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 37 to amend the tax incremental district application.
Would anybody like to speak to this item?
It's a second reading. We want to open up to the public
Okay.
first, I think.
So there's no initial on this one. Very good. Folks, it is a second reading, and when it's a second reading, you do have the opportunity to engage the council on this topic. Is there anybody who wanted to speak to this item? There he is, right there. Welcome.
I'd like to talk about this a little bit. First off, my criticism of TIFs, I really believe that TIFs should be used for what their intended purpose was, to clean up blighted areas and to offer more affordable housing. They have been used that way in Sioux Falls. I know they have. They've also been used to build sports complexes, luxury hotels, condominiums. And essentially what a TIF is, when I have friends ask me, well, what is a TIF? I said, well, this is the easiest way to explain it to you. It's a tax rebate that you can use to go towards your property. So if I were to get a TIF, I would pay in my property taxes I pay $900 something a year, and I would get a portion of that back that I could use to improve my property. That's basically what a TIF is. I've actually said that we need to expand them to affordable housing and people who own smaller apartment buildings and stuff like that. As for the TIF application, this was going in a good direction, but now I see it's really watered down and will probably get voted down tonight because we know how things go in this council. But I just wanted to say that I found it pretty laughable when the developers claimed that their investors are their intellectual property. Well, that is true. In private business, you're allowed to do whatever you want. You can keep whatever you want a secret. But once you ask for a public assistance in any way, it becomes public. It is no longer your property. You have to give that information up. I'll give you an example. When I bought my home, I got a community development loan. I had to submit my tax. This was a loan, by the way. This wasn't a TIF. I had to submit my tax returns. I had to go through several interviews with community development, and I didn't have a problem with that. I was asking for a public program. But for some reason, when a private developer comes in and wants to build a luxury hotel downtown, he shouldn't have to give up that information because it's intellectual property. He gave up his right to intellectual property when he came to the city and asked for public assistance. Because that's basically what he's asking for, is public assistance. It'd be no different than someone asking for food stamps, really. So it's too bad this got watered down. I thought it was going in the right direction. I just believe that if you're applying for a TIF, you should have every investor's name listed on that application. And if you have a problem with that, then don't apply for the TIF. It's really simple.
Thank you very much. Folks, anybody else want to speak to this item before I welcome?
I got sort of a different outlook on this TIF. When the city came out and told all people that owned rental properties and said that the people that have rental properties have to register it with the city. Now that's made public. If I want to own rental property, why should people know that I own rental property? Why should people know what properties I own or anybody owns? You know, if you're going to bring a TIF in, that's fine. But after I heard what went on in the TIFs, I guess my question is when did Darren Smith know about what was going on? When did the people in the city know what was going on with the mayor's wife getting in on a TIF and the mayor, you know, I guess what I'm looking at, we got to treat people equal in the city. If you're going to invest in any kind of real estate or if you're going to invest in a TIF project, you shouldn't be able to make money as an elected official off the hardworking people of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I think it's time that the city council steps up. I can almost tell who's going to vote for it and who's not going to vote for it just by sitting here just looking. That's the sad part, because I've been coming to this meeting so many times, and I tell people, you can read people's minds just by looking at them. And I'm hoping that you people are here for the citizens of Sioux Falls and you realize that elected officials should not be able to make money off from the hardworking people of Sioux Falls.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak to this item? Well, thank you very much. We do have a second reading. Did anybody want to make a motion?
Mayor, if I could talk to the item,
Sure.
And with the city attorney's assistance, we did have a request to have an outside attorney review the proposed amendments that I had made, and I'm not sure if he's here. He is. And if it's possible, we had all received a copy of the 7-page report. I don't know if it's worth reviewing all of it, but I would think if Chris could give us at least a little abbreviated version, please, of what you found.
Absolutely. Good evening, Council. My name is Chris Lent, and I'm an attorney at Woods Fuller, Schultz & Smith here in Sioux Falls, and the city asked me to provide an opinion on the amendment dealing with the issues that might be raised from federal securities law standpoint, among other things. And there we found basically, we drove home 2 points, but I think I'll just focus on the second point, Greg, if that's okay. Our second point in the letter is that the amendment presents some potential risk exposure to the company that, in addition to the TIF portion of the project, seeks to raise its equity portion of the financing to pay for the project. Since 2005, all but possibly one or two of the companies that have applied for TIF in Sioux Falls have raised their equity portion of the capital privately. They have raised their capital privately, not by choice.
Chris, folks, are we on the amendment? We haven't made this amendment yet, have we? Agenda item 64, Jamison Amendment. That's just appearing on the screen.
Oh, that's
very good.
That's a different one.
Very good. So I don't know who. Thank you. It looks like they've corrected that. Chris, I apologize. It was on the screen and it had to be confusing for the people watching. Chris, I apologize. What we're talking about now is basically the item that is on the agenda itself. And Councilor Jamison has asked if Chris Lent could just kind of go through his findings. So people who are watching this at home, they're probably a little confused. Now, if you just come back and Chris, again, continue. I apologize by what appeared on that.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
No, Chris is addressing the original Jamison amendment, if I'm...
Right.
And we have not made a motion to approve, because there is an ordinance on that needs to be, we need an motion and a second before we can make an amendment, correct?
Yes.
We have not done that yet.
Exactly.
Unless I went to sleep.
No, you're spot on.
So
there was
I think
something
that,
appearing on the screen that
right,
had
I
to be
understand that,
confusing.
and Chris is addressing what was appearing on the screen. We aren't ready to talk about an amendment until we've made a motion, and I would do that so that we can move forward properly, if that would.
Councilor Jamison, are you comfortable with that, or?
I think I follow, yes.
I move approval on item 64.
Very good. Councilor Ermbach has made a motion to approve, and Councilor Jamison has seconded it. So now we have should we?
No, you can have conversation, but he hasn't presented an amendment of any kind. Well, we've seen it not publicly. We also haven't had really a staff report. So if the public is watching, they're wondering what in the world we're talking about, because we haven't had a presentation on it.
Right.
Am I
Chris, thank you.
out of line?
So what Chris is talking about is item 64, which has been read by the city clerk, and now, Chris, if you would continue, we'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I was saying, most of these developers have raised their capital privately. They have raised their capital privately, not by choice, but as then mandated by federal and state securities laws, relying on what's an exemption from registration called Rule 506B. And that's a special exemption that a lot of companies throughout the United States use to raise their capital privately. And under Rule 506B, companies are prohibited from making conducting any form of public solicitation or any public form of communication in connection with the raising of their capital. This means, for example, they cannot advertise in a newspaper, they can't publish on radio or television what the details of raising their capital. So the concern with, when I say the amendment, is the 2117, I believe, whichever's up for for a vote. The concern with the ordinance that's been proposed is that by disclosing the names of the investors to the city, the company may run the risk of violating the prohibition against public communication in the equity financing process. In particular, if a member of the public or local media was ever able to get access to the investors' names and the names that were connected to a project, there is a potential risk that such publication could be considered a violation of this public communication process. So what would possibly happen is, under the ordinance, if you submitted the investors' names and someone from the local media or public citizen obtain those investors' names and then publish those through some social media, that could be a form of public solicitation, because someone who's viewing that information may be able to see that there is a potential equity raising of money by a company. Now, I don't have too much further. Admittedly, the level of risk is uncertain because the SEC and the state securities commissions have not entirely been clear on the attachment of liability to a company when the communication is conducted by a third party, in this case, a media or someone through social media. But we believe the risk is real, and there would be and this would be a reason that might discourage a company from wanting to raise capital in South Dakota or wherever. And that's what the advice we gave in our opinion letters. That might be a risk that's too much to take for a company and might severely discourage them from wanting to raise their capital. I have other things to say too, but that's in a nutshell what the opinion letter stated.
Very good. Councilor Staggers.
You know, I've had a chance to read your analysis, Chris, and thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
But after reading the analysis, I guess I'm still inclined to think, as most citizens of Sioux Falls would probably think, what is really wrong with revealing somebody's name that wants to get a tax benefit? And I guess I still feel that way after you're reading your analysis, and primarily because of this one sentence that you have in your analysis on page 4. The company is strictly prohibited from any form of public communication directly or indirectly in connection with the offer and sale of the security. Yeah, we're not telling the company to reveal this. We're asking for the information for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if that information gets out from the city, well, it's not the company's fault. They're not in violation of 506B at all.
Well, and Mr. Staggers, it's a great point, but that's the point of part of my letter, is that when I said that the risk is somewhat uncertain because the SEC and the state securities commissions are not very clear as to whether the liability would attach to the company because it was done through another third party, the city or a local media.
And I think most people would say it would be unreasonable to place blame on the company when we have a possible ordinance forcing them to give us that information. It just doesn't.
Well, the way, I think there is some significant, there is some risk to a company who's trying to raise money because the SEC has not been clear, nor the State Securities Commission has been clear that the liability would attach to the company, even though the communication comes through the city, which would then go through a local media or some public citizen who wanted to request that information. So. And we opined in our letter that information would be open to under the South Dakota Open Records Law, and I think it'd be very easily accessible for a member of the public to get that information and publish it. And that's the risk that I think is very viable for a company. And I don't know, it's uncertain how someone would come down on that.
Okay.
In terms of,
So basically, we have uncertainty here.
I would go more than uncertainty. I think there's definitely some risk there, and I think there's, based on some of the no action letters that are referenced in that letter, I think the SEC could go either way. And on one hand, I think one day they may view it this way, which would present severe risk, and one day it might be a different way.
Well, if I could just say one, yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the SEC, and they can go one way one day and another way the next day. But when citizens look at an issue like this, I mean, all we're asking for the names of the people that in a TIF that want to get a tax break, and that's all. Yeah. And everybody would say, this is reasonable to know. If you don't want your name revealed, don't invest, or don't even get a TIF.
Yeah,
just going to say thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions, comments of Chris? Councilor Jameson.
If I could thank Chris for his work and welcome to the City Council firing squad. You did very well. If I could move the discussion to the council, I would. Thank you, Chris.
Could I ask one more question, Mr.
Councilor
Mayor?
Stagers.
Yeah, I guess I am curious. How much is the city paying for the analysis?
It's by hour, and there was a cap on it, and we're not going to exceed that cap.
And that cap is?
It's 4,500 or 40,250, but we're not even close to that.
What are we at?
I don't know, maybe 2/3 of that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Entman.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. Is it appropriate now to ask for Darren Smith to come forward? I've got a couple of questions for him on this issue.
Darren.
Good evening.
First of all, Darren, one thing, Councilor Stager says the investors are getting a tax break by investing in a TIF, and it's my understanding they're not really getting a tax break. They're investing in a TIF with the opportunity of getting some kind of a return on their investment. And that's one thing I guess I'm kind of confused about. But the other thing is it seems like sometimes people insinuate that we throw these TIFs around like we're sprinkling water on flowers or something, and that isn't necessarily the case here. It's been my recollection since I've served on this council that we take the TIFs very seriously, and we look at what it's being used for, blighted property, for example,
That's right.
or other property that's virtually undevelopable,
That's
and
right.
we're able to move forward because of the TIF to move forward and reclaim this property. Can you tell us a little bit about what we've done with TIFs since in the past 3 years, 3.5 years?
Yeah, well, how much time do we have? I'd love to, and I enjoy talking about this, and I'd like to sit down with some of the folks who've spoken tonight and visit with them. Yes, I think there's, in my opinion, a tremendous misunderstanding of tax increment financing and how we apply it in Sioux Falls and how we have historically. The truth is, the city of Sioux Falls has and continues to utilize TIF as a tool in an extremely conservative manner. State law was changed some 3 years ago that gave the ability for cities and other units of government, counties and others, to utilize TIF in a much more liberal fashion. We have not followed that path. The standard we hold it to is development or redevelopment of a blighted site. Blight is a subjective definition, but one we use is something that will not develop on its own. And a lot of times we can look at properties that have not developed for years or decades through the traditional, private market tools that exist. So that's where we start. The other big misunderstanding is that the TIF dollars a lot of times go to reimburse for what we consider a public improvement. Environmental remediation of a blighted site is one. Environmental contamination and cleaning that up to make it redevelopable. There are cities across the United States who spend tax dollars proactively to clean up environmentally contaminated sites and then make available for redevelopment. The way we utilize TIF, we actually use the private dollars. The private dollars are the vehicle to clean up the site. They are then reimbursed over a several-year period through their own property tax dollars for what we would consider to be a public benefit. Then, of course, you look at the return on that investment, and we could go through several of the projects that we've approved for TIF districts in the last 3+ years, where you see the tax-assessed value of a blighted property here, and then after it is redeveloped, the taxable value is here. The property taxes generated can be hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not being realized today for the city, county, and school district. In the case of a Costco, for example, you have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales tax revenue generated on a site that, in that case, is literally a stone's throw from the busiest street in the state of South Dakota that went undeveloped for a quarter of a century. I think most people would consider that blighted. and it needed assistance or a safety net to be developed. So,
And we,
again,
Mayor? And we were able to develop that. And then Costco is a prime example where we had set aside a significant dollar amount in the TIF, specifically restricted that TIF, if I'm not mistaken, to reclamation of what could possibly have been a very contaminated site. Fortunately, it wasn't as bad as what it could have been. It's my understanding.
Right.
And Costco didn't even go along with the TIF that they were entitled to by action that we had previously taken. Is that not correct?
That's correct. Costco has notified us that they do not anticipate requesting any dollars through the TIF. So we're formalizing that right now with their office. But yes, that is correct. There will be no TIF dollars paid for the Costco portion of that project. That TIF was always intended to be a safety net because of the severe environmental contamination that existed at one time and was thought by the professionals to still possibly exist. It was a safety net, and it allowed them to move forward and make a significant private investment. And again, the return on investment for the public is tremendous in the form of property tax dollars and sales tax revenue generated at that site now, and there will be no TIF dollars paid out for the Costco portion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Karski.
Don't go away, Darren.
Yeah.
Two things. What I heard you say and what I think I understand is that the investors in a project that receive a TIF are actually agreeing to increase their property taxes significantly because when the project's done, they're paying significant amount more in property taxes. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. So we're not giving them money. They're agreeing to pay more in taxes, and we're refunding part of that for improvements to the property so that the project can go forward.
They are essentially repaid for what we consider public improvements with their own property tax dollars.
Okay. And then the second part of my question is involving more this amendment that we're talking about, or proposal that we're talking about. When you get a TIF application, are investors identified on that application?
Well, I would remind the council that until a few months ago, the city did not have a formal application. So we spent the better part of the last year improving the TIF process in a significant way and making it much more formal. The application we have in place now, per the ordinance that you approved a few months ago, yes, we would ask for the principal, in fact, I can use the principals in the project.
And the principals are typically the ones that have the investment risk. They're the ones that are borrowing the money. They're the ones that are bearing the burden of if the project fails, they lose money. Fair to say?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Muck.
Remind me, Darren, my recollection is that the TIFs that we have adopted over the last many years, there's only 18 or 19 of them. It's not very many.
Yep.
But the actual TIF portion, and again, Councilor Karski's right, it's them agreeing to increase their property taxes. But the actual TIF portion of those, some of them enormous projects. I mean, one of the great ones is the Hilton Garden Inn downtown. It's a multi-million-dollar project. The TIF portion, small, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
No, that's right.
It's a small portion of a huge project.
Yeah, it's typically, it's typically 5 to 15%. Sometimes it can go a little above 15, but typically it's in that 5 to 15% range. We do have 18 TIF districts that have been approved in the history of Sioux Falls. That's exactly the same number that has been approved for the city of Mitchell by comparison. It's about 1/4 the number of TIF districts approved by the city of Rapid City, which is somewhat significantly smaller than us. Omaha, by comparison, obviously they're somewhat larger than Sioux Falls. They have approved approximately 300 TIFs. Again, we've approved 18. We did not approve a TIF district as a city in the entire year of 2013. Late 2012 was the last TIF district approved.
I guess just an editorial comment. We've seen projects with that little contribution that the city's involved with. We've seen amazing projects happen because we've partnered with these folks. to make TIFs happen. I don't appreciate the negative comments about TIFs. They've been a really great tool for Sioux Falls in a really careful way, and I appreciate your work on it.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. And Darren, just as long as you're up here, and I think of the questions that have been asked and the comments, I think it's only fair to say that the TIF process is complicated.
Yeah.
Even with Chris's testimony, there's details that some of us would have never have known. Even elected officials are somewhat uneasy about all the details of TIFs. Mm-hmm. Certainly I have. Just as long as you're up here, though, just on a side note, talking through all these other communities that I've done a lot of research talking to, Rapid City being the main one, how would you feel about a group of people getting together, like 2 council members, two city or county commissioners, a school board member, and somebody within your staff who would review these TIFs and kind of give us a recommendation on whether they should be brought forward? I know currently you do that, and your staff does a good job.
Yes.
But in Rapid City, the county is feeling left out of their discussion, and now all of a sudden the county is attacking the city for their use of TIFs.
Yeah.
I think if we prevented that by instituting a group or panel that met and reviewed these TIFs and the process, we could prevent those animosities from occurring. Rather than just sending those 2 other bodies a letter, we actually invited them to the table to review it. How would you feel about that?
Well, certainly it is something. We spent a significant amount of time, the better part of a year, looking at how other cities do it, not only in South Dakota but across the country, and then comparing that to how we've done it and how we would like to do it. And so I guess the best way to sum it up would be, we presented the ordinance we did for a reason. We like the process that was adopted. What we realized, however, is we need to step it up in terms of relationship building with the county in particular, the school district, better communication, planning commission, city council. And so that's exactly what we've prescribed in that ordinance to do. So we'd like to try that first and keep the process simple and efficient. And but if we run into issues with that, certainly we want to retain it as an important economic development tool, and we would look at tweaking the process if we had to.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mayor, if I could just sum up this discussion, if I could, we started this a long time ago talking about transparency and disclosure in the whole TIF process. And the reason for that was to build confidence in the public's eye about what we're doing with TIFs, how we're doing them, how we're approving them, and what we're using them for. And that was my approach, to add disclosure. As Councilor Intiman put it, it all sounds pretty good at the beginning, and when we get into the details, it gets a little more complicated. And through the attorney's review, we found out where the complication is. And we do not want a cooling effect on the investment community or the development community on taking care of those blighted areas in our city. And the TIF is a wonderful tool for taking care of a lot of things. So, in light of that, I am making a substitute motion of the one that I have made before, that's before you now, to remove a significant, almost all of my amendment, and start over with a small revised version. I'd like to make a substitute motion if I could.
I don't know. What is on the statement?
You want to read it?
Do you have it?
It's okay if the
one you just handed out tonight?
Yes.
Okay, this is a motion to amend the main motion. Motion to amend by striking everything after first sentence in section 37.217 and adding a new section 37.220 prohibitions. The new section shall read, quote, "No elected official of the city or her spouse may have a financial interest in a tax incremental financing district. No appointed employee or her spouse may have a financial interest in a tax incremental district unless otherwise authorized by law," end quote.
Councilor Jameson.
This has been rewritten a couple of times.
Can we get a second on that first?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson Jr.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
This has been rewritten a couple of times, and some of it with the help of the city attorney. What's different from the one we talked about earlier today at the 4 o'clock meeting are the last 5 words, unless otherwise authorized by law. If I'm correct, right? Okay. And the real reason for that is because there is already a current law that states how other employees and or board members essentially are to act in accordance to law. And I would refer to the city attorney if he would like to define it, or if anybody has questions about that to the city attorney. But other than that, I think all the other details we've talked about.
Councilor Karski.
We had a chance to read this, and that was before he added those last 5 words, Councilor Jamison, and I do have concerns, and I haven't really had a lot of time to think this over because we've only had a few hours. I would like to hear from the city attorney
David?
what his opinion on that last 5 words does.
Well, again, thank you, Councilor Karski. I mean, when I was presented with this language from Councilor Jamison, I was reminded of certainly all our ethics ordinances in terms of what is required for disclosures already. And I think to assure the public, I mean, we have mandatory disclosure ordinances within Chapter 35 regarding any elected official, meaning, you know, the 9 elected officials sitting up here have to disclose any possible financial interest. They can't participate in the discussion or the vote on any item where they have a financial interest. And we also have those same disclosure requirements regarding any city employee and also including any board members. So any citizen board members would also be included in that mandatory disclosure already under our ethics ordinances. We have 45 different citizen boards within the city, and we, out of those, I would guess a ballpark figure, 300 to 400 citizens involved as, under our ethics ordinances, a officer or employee of the city. It defines it very broadly. Under our ethics ordinances, say a board member could be involved in something with the city, have a financial interest, as long as they did 2 things: disclose that interest, and they were not participating in the decision-making regarding that issue. And so in adding these few words, my concern was when we have board members and spouses, say someone on a completely unrelated board, their spouse wants to invest in a TIF, why would we prohibit that if it's otherwise allowed by law? So that was where that language was coming from, and it would have to be authorized specifically by law in order to happen. And I think it was still trying to put into effect what Councilor Jamison's intent was, yet allow those 600 plus citizen board members and their spouses an ability, if there's a specific, if they follow all the specific legal requirements, to be able to invest in something like this.
If I may.
Please, Councilor Karski.
With all that being said, then, as a candidate, I'm not a candidate now, but any candidate for city council, when they fill out their financial disclosure forms, their spouse's income is included on that form and any investments that they receive. So my question then becomes, the way this amendment is written, if one of our current candidates that's not serving on the council, and we have several, has maybe invested $20,000 in one of our TIFs 2 years ago, are they then precluded from being a candidate for city council?
That would be an ex post facto law where you're making something that was already legal, you're trying to bring it back. You can't do that.
Okay, but going forward, that would be the case. We could eliminate several potential candidates because 3 years ago their spouse invested in made an investment. And
This would be prospective, yeah, only not, if I'm understanding your question right.
It's a what-if thing, yes. Yeah, okay. And these are the questions that I'm having, and that's why I'm uncertain. I'd like more time to ponder this, and I'm going to request that maybe instead of voting on this tonight, that we postpone the vote on this till there's more time to look at and discuss this issue.
Second.
Was that a
Was
motion?
that a motion?
I'll make that motion to delay it to the first meeting in April.
There's been a motion to delay this topic until the first meeting of April, which is on April.
Give you a date.
Second.
Is that second?
Second. Yeah.
First meeting in April is the first.
April 1st.
Is on April 1st. There's been a motion to delay this topic until April 1st, and it has been seconded by Councilor Staggers. What we're talking about now is whether we should delay this topic until that time. So let's keep on that topic, and then we'll see where that leads us. Councilor Entman.
Mr. Mayor, you know, when you look at the TIFs and you look at the way this city council has looked at a TIF and how we've taken it very seriously, we have had no abuses. We question the TIF and what it's actually being used for. Councilor Anderson, as an example, facade easements. He's always asking the question, because we have a facade easement program on the books, is this included in a TIF? And because he's not in favor of including these in a TIFs. If we're doing our duty, we're asking the questions right up front. I do not want to delay action on this. I think we need to take action on it tonight. And I would encourage those to vote against postponing this any longer. I think we need to honor the people of our city to wanting to invest in our community, to reinvest in what we have, and thereby improving our community. So I think we need to vote on this and get it done with tonight.
Councilor Buck.
I would agree with Councilor Entman, and I would just make the point that this amendment really is about one person. And I'm tired of having that conversation. I don't believe people's spouses were elected to the city council, and I don't appreciate this conversation the way that it's been going. That because as elected officials we're covered by the ethics ordinance and we're expected to behave in a certain way. And you know, you guys you told me earlier that you elected me to work for the people of Sioux Falls. You did not elect my husband, and his financial dealings or anyone else's spouse's financial dealings have nothing to do. And especially if it involves their economic well-being. I'm just really upset by this conversation. I want the vote to happen tonight.
Councilor Karski.
The reason, just a little background on why I'm suggesting we postpone this delay, kind of came from a comment that Darren Smith made. We haven't had a TIF in 14, 15, 16 months. It's been a year and a half. I don't think waiting 4 more weeks is really going to do anything. I mean, we don't have any TIFs that are pending. And to really look at it, and I don't see the harm in it.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Councilman Kursky, I'm going to agree with you 100%. This will allow us also time to relook at this whole issue and see if there might be some other way to word this and draft this. I was thinking about that, and Councilman Staggers and I were sort of whispering it over too. I think it is something that we need to look at further, and I don't see where a few weeks is going to hurt anything.
Councilor Entman.
You know, I might just remind my fellow councilors respectfully that the city staff has worked on this and has made numerous presentations before committees and before informational sessions on the TIF. And we have all, at one point or time, asked some significant questions about the TIF. Quite honestly, I think we've got a good program here. I believe the work that the staff has done on this TIF has been very significant, and they've shared everything right up front with us on this issue. So I'm here to say I'm going to vote no on the proposed amendment, and I do not believe that we should change the existing ordinance.
Very good. Well, yes, Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I guess I want to reply to that, Councilman Edelman. Over the last year, this council has talked about TIF. We have talked about having work sessions on TIFs. Where are we at on that right now? You know, and we're biting little pieces out of it, but we haven't had that discussion. So if we want to talk about TIF, then we need to have that discussion. It needs to be put on an agenda somewhere.
Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
I believe that the original intent of the ordinance change by Councilor Jameson was to bring more transparency to this issue. And because of receiving our attorney's view of the amendments. We just received them yesterday afternoon. And then because of the change, even since our informational this afternoon, I too am going to vote for a deferral.
Yes, Councilor.
I might as well throw my 2 cents in after listening to everybody. Both sides have good points, but let's remember also, I think that even if we vote this amendment down, that does not in itself say that Councilor Jameson or any other one of the councilors on his council could re-bring an amendment to this ordinance after they've had time to really get it down and look at it and get with the city's attorney again. And instead of doing it in the last 2 hours, adding 5 words that we think we're pretty sure maybe we'll take care of it, let's just get rid of it right now, and then let's come back with one that's been studied thoroughly.
Very good. Well, Council, very good. We've got an amendment to delay this item until the first meeting in April. Motion's been made, has been seconded. Very, very good discussion. Roll call vote, please.
This is the roll call on the deferral. Council members Rolfing?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
No.
Erpenbach?
No.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
That has passed 5-3. Item number 65.
Item number 65 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property west of North Pennsylvania Avenue and south of West 54th Street North from the RS2 Residential District to the RD Residential District, petition number 2014-15, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Mike Cooper with City Planning and Building Services. This is a second reading of a zoning change request. The applicants are Richard Brake and Thomas Hurd. This property is located just south of 54th Street North and west of Career Avenue. It's part of the Green Hills Addition subdivision. This consists of 5 existing platted lots that are proposed to be rezoned to allow the development of 4-unit townhome apartments. The RS2 current zoning limits land uses to either single-family or twin home. The RD zoning would allow the 4-plexes to be constructed, although a conditional use permit would still be required. The property to the north of 54th Street is part of the University Center property. Property to the east is zoned for multifamily residential, and property to the south is zoned RD and is being developed into the 4-unit residential structures. The property consists of just over 1 acre in size. We did not have any public comments on this item at the Planning Commission meeting with the recommendation for approval.
I would move approval.
Before we do that, is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to this item? Very good.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Councilor.
Second, Erpenbach.
There's been a motion made by Councilor Rolfing, seconded by Councilor Karski, to move forward with this item. If there's no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 66.
Item 66 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment, petition number 2014-113, to Chapter 160-446, Plan Development Districts at 5309 East Ryan Place, amending the Red Rock Park West Plan Development District regulations. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a request to amend an existing plan development zoning district by adding additional land uses. The applicant is Verizon Wireless, the owner of an existing telecommunications structure on this property. The property consists of just under 1 acre in size. The history of this, it's located on the east side of Foss Avenue, north of Arrowhead Parkway. The telecommunications structure was built in 2002, at the time that this property was zoned commercial. In 2006, this area was requested by the owner to be amended into a planned development that would allow additional uses, including office as well as commercial. At that time, the telecommunication tower was not being modified, and as part of the PD, we did not specifically include the telecommunications tower or antenna support structures land uses. So we're correcting that with this amendment tonight. Verizon is proposing to make improvements to the existing tower with an additional antenna structure on the existing monopole, as well as expanding the equipment building that's currently on the site. So this amendment would allow those improvements to be made, and there's no additional towers or support structures that are being proposed as part of this amendment. And we did not receive any public comment on this request as well.
Thank you, Mike. Again, folks, second reading. Anybody have anybody want to speak to this item? Very good. Council?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Ruffenbach's made a motion to approve item 66, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. If there's no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Council members Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson. Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 67.
Item 67 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls approving the preliminary plan of West Point Estates addition.
This is a preliminary subdivision plan. The applicant is 4 Points Development. Clint Ackerman is the owner of this development. In this case, a subdivision plan is a layout of the property based on the zoning that has been already approved by the City Council of the proposed streets, lots, as well as the preliminary plans that we can look at for water, sewer, and storm drainage. So it goes through quite a bit of review by city staff and is also is brought to you by review from the Planning Commission. This property is located south of West 85th Street, approximately 1/4 mile east of Tallgrass Avenue, just west of the Platinum Valley development. This property was annexed. The zoning was approved by the City Council recently, and now this development plan is being presented tonight for your approval. This will be primarily a residential development. The southern portion of about 42 acres is being developed into residential, approximately 117 residential lots. The center portion is being developed into residential lots for a higher density of RD, which could be twin homes or fourplexes. The northeast corner has been approved for multifamily development, and the northwest corner for office development. The subdivision plan shows connecting the streets with the development to the east, as well as future development to the west. And on the south side of this development is the very edge of our existing growth area. This is the southernmost portion of our existing service area with our sanitary sewer system. The sanitary sewer will be coming from the north to serve this property, and the water main extension will be coming from the east. The land to the west has not been zoned yet, but we are working with that landowner since that property has been annexed to come in with a rezoning plan. So again, this has gone through city review as well as Planning Commission review, and the recommendation is to approve this preliminary plan tonight.
Thanks, Michael. Council, any motions?
Move to approve.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Jamison's made a motion to approve this resolution, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. There is no discussion. Yes, Councilor Anderson Jr.
Mike, before you leave there, what, my usual question on these edge of the city developments, how's our water tables? Do we have any retention ponds that are going to have to be planned with this?
There's two existing small wetlands that will be mitigated with this development. But again, it's part of their stormwater drainage plan. And I don't know if we can show that on there, but it will be in compliance with our stormwater drainage requirements, yes. And that's what this preliminary subdivision plan shows us. So the answer to your question is There's not any major concerns as far as the water table or storm drainage. It will be in compliance with our engineering requirements.
And if I may continue, and we've heard nothing from any neighboring property owners or anyone to the
No
south?
public testimony on this one.
Yeah, thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Rolfing? Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson? Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 68.
Item 68 is a resolution correcting the terms of 2 citizen board members.
Council?
Move
anybody
to
want-
approve, Erpenbach?
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Brock's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. There's no discussion or roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson? Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 69.
Item 69 is a report of the February 26, 2014 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Very good. Thank you. If there is no business, I do know that there are some, is there new business, Darren?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I apologize. I don't know if this is officially new business, but the folks who were with the Spread the Word to End the Word
Yes.
group that were here earlier tonight, they asked me at the conclusion of the meeting if you would be so kind as to consider signing their banner on your way out, and it's on the table in the community room. So,
Darren, thank you very much. Great job. We do have some folks here from USF. I know that. I'd like to welcome you to our city council meeting tonight. Thank you for having interest in what we do here, and hope you get good credits with it. It's a longer meeting tonight. But again, welcome. We'll give you a hand. Council, any other items?
Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Box made a motion to adjourn our meeting tonight, seconded by Councilor Karski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Sioux Falls. Thank you, Council.